Get in there. That's what I absolutely love about margin fishing. Big fish, easy to catch. And we've had an amazing little session here filming for some Dynamite products. We've actually shown some brand new products with rod and line work, and I just thought there was some fish to be caught in my margin, so definitely wanted to have a go down there. And I just want to show you how easy fishing can be, because my son started fishing. He's only 11 or 12 now, he's just had his birthday, and he is literally going down the local sort of like village pond with a tin of corn, and he's having like the most amazing time. And even as match anglers, fishing can be so simple, you know. You can have such a good time fishing with just really simple kit. You don't need loads of expensive gear. You can have a great time catching fish like this, and I want to show you how. So here's a nice carp, this guy. Oh, there we go. This venue's Holly Farm. I used to fish here a lot years ago and used to catch loads of fish, and this would probably be an old warrior that maybe I caught all them years ago. It's a nice fish. Let's see if he's got, if I can hold him up for you. I don't want to hold him up too high because I don't want him to flip, but look, he's a cracking fish. Beautiful fish. I'm going to say the average stamp of fishing in this lake, 3 to 5 pounds, something like that, and he is above average, I'm saying. There you go, mate, back there. So let me show you how simple fishing can be. I've literally opened a tin of Sweetcorn. This is XL Sweetcorn. The reason I like this Sweetcorn is because it seems to always be a pretty consistent size, which is what I want for fishing. I don't want little tiny bits in there, and I don't want odd shaped grains of corn. I want everything to be pretty consistent. I've plumbed up in my margin, so this is really important, and we can get really tight in here. First thing I think you need to do is use a really heavy plummet. So this is 40 grams, so that's over an ounce. And because I'm using heavy elastic, it means I can get a really good reading. So let's get tight in on this, because this is what I'm looking for when I'm margin fishing. If I go really close into the edge here, maybe we can see that. Can we get in there? Can you see that?
Yeah.
I can see that the plummet wants to sort of skid down. It's almost like there's a wall, and it wants to skid down that wall. That's great to me, because it means the fish are going to struggle to get behind my loose feed and hook bait. But also, if I look here, I mean, this is a superb margin because it's pretty consistent as a depth. You know, give or take maybe an inch or so, it's pretty consistent as a depth. And what I've done is I've plumbed up, so I've got the plummet on the bottom, and the bottom of my float body is just under the water's surface. And that means that I know my hook bait's always going to be on the bottom. I've got a far bank marker so I can line everything up. And when I relax my rig, that's how my float's going to sit. So everything is sitting nice. Okay? I think margins depend on the time of year, depends on the depth that you're looking for. Some venues you're looking for 12 inches of water, some venues it's 3 feet, but this is about 2 foot of depth, which is perfect for what we're trying to do today. As you can see, it's not the warmest of days. The rain is starting to really hammer down now, but we're fishing. I don't mind. I've got a nice strong elastic. This is 15 hollow. I've got a 4x12 float, which is probably equivalent to 0.2 of a gram. And I've shotted that down here with Stotts. That's a little bulk of number 9s. I've got one number 9 above my hook length. It's an 020 main line, and I've got an 018 hook length. Now, it's only 5 inches long, that hook length, and I've tied my hook knotless knot style. So to cut down on all of my prep, I tie all of my heavy gear, knotless knot, with a bait band. And if I'm not using pellets, I just cut the bait band off. So now I can use it just as I would a spade end hook. And I think a knotless knot is really super strong. So I get a super strong knot, easy to tie as well. I know it's just not going to let me down. Let's put a bit of bait on, because I want to show you how I'm hooking my bait, because a lot of people ask about hooking Sweetcorn. What I like to do is pick out a nice uniform grain. That looks spot on to me. And I'm going to go in through the hard end of the corn. You've got two ends. You've got a hard end, you've got an open end. I'm going to go through the solid hard end of the corn, sort of through the top, ease it round. You've got plenty of hook buried in the corn, but also plenty of hook point showing. You need the hook point showing. That's going to help you hook the fish. Okay, now we need a bit of feed. Again, super simple. We want to be super accurate. All I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up a little pole mounted pot, and I'm going to place 20 or so grains of corn in a pole mounted pot. Really, really simple. You can notice that I've got a short line between pole tip and float. That's not for hitting bites. That's because I want the rig to be in exactly the same position every time. If I had a long line, the float's got a tendency to drift around the swim, and I've just plumbed up super accurately. I want to make sure that I'm fishing in the same spot every time. That short line is just going to help me. I've got a top kit plus one section, you know, literally really close to my fishing position. Now, when I put my bait in, I'm not going to put my hook bait in. I'm going to put my bait in first. So I'm just going to tap out that corn. That's the loose feed. It's going to take 3 or 4 seconds for that to hit the bottom. And now I want to put my hook bait in amongst that loose feed. And then it's a case of sitting there with a nice still hook bait and just waiting. I know that I've got a grain of corn sitting in amongst that loose feed, ready for my next fish. So you can see little tiny line bites. What I'm looking to do is strike only at fish taking my bait in the mouth. So I'm looking for a really sharp, fast dink of the float. I don't want anything that's moved my float to the side. I don't want any slow bites. I want a sharp dink of that float, which shows me the fish has sucked in that hook bait, turned its head fast, and we know that the fish has been hooked in the mouth. Last thing we want to do is foul hook the fish. One, because we don't want to cause damage to the fish, and also you'll usually end up losing the fish anyway. And it doesn't feel right to me to be foul hooking fish. You want to hook every fish nice and clean in the mouth. Something that's really apparent and you've got to be well aware of is that it's easy for these fish to clear your bait out. So it's all right as sitting here. We need to keep feed going in. So I'll only do this for maybe 90 seconds or 2 minutes before we come in, fill that pot again, and then go back out with another load of feed. The risk that we could have is that we've got 1 grain of sweet corn sitting down there because all our loose feed has been eaten. And obviously that's not going to be attractive at all to anything. Every time I feel that my float is moving because there's fish activity down there, and I feel that my presentation has been ruined because the fish has maybe moved my hook bait with its fins or just the natural movement down there, I'll just lift my rig out and place it back in the water. Really simple. Lift it out, place it back in the water. What I'm not doing is constantly lifting and dropping the pole float or the hook bait. I just think that looks a little bit unnatural, and these big fish have just seen that all before. You can see how that float sort of sits there. It's not drifting around the swim. It is literally just sitting there until a fish hopefully picks up that hook bait. So I think that's 2 minutes has gone by. We can have another refeed. So I always like to change my hook bait. It's just a thing that I do, stops me being a little bit lazy. So I'm changing my hook bait. I'm going to Another 20 grains of corn in that pot. Don't need to feed loads and loads of bait, especially when the water's a little bit cooler. Rattle that bait out, lift the rig out. And especially later on in a session, this is a brilliant way of fishing. Really simple, brilliant way of fishing. So there we go, just keep it sitting as still as you can. We're literally setting a trap there for 1 or 2 fish to just come into that loose fed corn and make a mistake. Quite often in this shallower water, you'll see fish when they're in this margin. You'll see maybe some tail movement, or you might even see fins sticking out of the water sometimes. But lots of the time you've got to read your float. So if your float is moving a little bit, you just know that there's a few fish down there. You just need to know that you're about right with your feeding. Then it becomes a case of getting your rigs right. But there's a bit of fin movement down there now. You can just see the float is just moving side to side, and then a little dink of the float. It's not a lot, it's just a little tiny dink of that float. I mean, this isn't a big fish, but still a great little fish to catch. Look, little tiny carp this time. I don't mind, it's a fish. We caught that big fish for you to show that it worked. We've just caught a little tiny one to show it's great for little tiny fish as well. Everything loves corn. Everything loves feeding in the margins. It's a great way of catching fish, especially later on in a session.